everyone, today I'm going to be doing my August wrap-up and my September to be read. I'm sorry if my voice sounds a little weird today. I'm not feeling too well, but I really wanted to do this video, so I hope you can understand me anyway. So let's get started. August was a really great reading month for me. I read 9 books and then I read 2 half books, so I guess that makes 10 books. The first book that I read was The Virgin Suicides by Jeffrey Tonight. I really love this one. I needed to read a classic, and I know this is probably not a classic, but the language in the book was classic-like. It reminded me of Jane Austen's books. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I really love this book just because it sounded like a classic. The next book that I read was a book that Christine recommended through one of her videos, and she really recommended it big time, so I decided to buy it and read it. And that is Angel Fall by Susan E. I will put the link to Christine down below so that you can see her video and her recommendation. I have to say, I like this book, but I'm not sure that I loved it as much as Christine did. I'm sorry, Christine. It was okay, but I felt like the storyline was a little too boring. I didn't feel like the story progressed too much. I think that I just need the sequel to really get into this world and understand the characters and the story. The third book that I read during August was Shadow Me by Tahara Mafi. This book was okay. I don't know what to say really. Now that I think of it, I can't really remember that much from it. I remember that it deals with this girl who can hurt people from touching them, so she cannot touch anyone. And therefore she is being held as a prisoner in the beginning of the book, and then she eventually manages to get out from the prison, and then things start to happen. I'm guessing that since I cannot really remember the book, it didn't really make a big impression on me, so sorry about that. I know a lot of you love this one. However, the fourth book that I read in August I really loved. That was Pivot Point by Casey West. This is the first book that I read during the Bout of Books readathon, and I just paced through this book. It took me about 1 day to read it, and I loved it. I loved the characters. I loved the feeling of being back in high school and suffering with all the high school students as you did yourself when you were a high school student. I loved the main character, Addison Coleman, and I loved how her story progresses with 2 boys in the picture. I would definitely recommend it to anyone who likes reading a contemporary young adult high school book. The fifth book that I read during August was The Program by Suzanne Young. I know a lot of you love this book. I have read a lot of recommendations. I think that's why I didn't really love this book, because my hopes for it were too high. Sometimes when you hear great things about a book, you just feel like this is going to be a great book, and then you are disappointed when you read it. I definitely was a little bit disappointed when reading this. It was a story that shouldn't last 400 pages. This book was a little bit dull, even though I did like the storyline, but it just keeps going on, and you have these depressing parts of the book. This wasn't one of my greatest reads this month. However, one of my greatest reads is the one that comes now, and that is The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. I have to say, I'm a sucker for Neil Gaiman. I love his books and I love his writing. I love his way of creating new worlds and creatures and writing about them in a poetic kind of way. This book deals with a boy who lives in a graveyard, and he is living among the dead people, so that means he's the only one alive in his family. That part is enough to make me excited. I thought it was wonderful how you could create a story in which you live among the dead people. Also, Neil Gaiman is great at making these short stories within the book, and we hear about the adventures of this boy who lives in the graveyard and how he grows up and how he becomes a young boy. And actually, the ending kind of made me cry a little bit, not too much, but I thought it was beautifully written. And Neil Gaiman, if you are ever watching this, I'm not sure you are, but this is one of your greatest books. The next book is Cinder by Marissa Meyer. I have heard great things about this book, and I bought it, and I also bought the sequel. I loved it. I really love this book. I love the fact that you mingle the fairy tale concept of Cinderella and then make it into a modern young adult story in which you have the main character who is the Cinderella character, but she's also composed by mechanics in her foot. In this picture, she has some kind of mechanics inside her, and that goes for almost all of her body. I think she does a really great job. It's not a given that that kind of idea would be a great book, but this book definitely is. I think it's great how Marisa Meyer manages to mingle the two stories together so that you get something classic and something modern. The next two books that I managed to read and that I finished during August is City of Bones and City of Ashes by Cassandra Clare. These are the first two books in the Mortal Instruments series. I kind of had mixed feelings about these books when I started reading them. I've heard great things about them, and I've also heard very bad things about them. People tend to say that you either love these books or you hate them. So I wasn't sure if I was going to buy all of the books and just take a chance, but I did it anyway, and I'm very happy I did. I really love these books. I think that they are filled with action. You are never bored when you read these books. Also, I really feel for the characters. I know I always say that, I feel for the characters, but I think that it's amazing when you read a book and you kind of feel for the characters. You want to know more about them and you want to follow them in their experiences. I'm very excited to read the next 3 books in the series during September. As I said, in August I also managed to read 2 half books, and that is because I started this book called Scarlet by Marisa Meyer, and this is the sequel to Cinder that I was talking about earlier. When I was halfway through it, I kind of felt like reading something completely different, and so I put this book down and I started reading The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. This is not young adult, this is a contemporary story, and I got halfway through this by the end of August. Now it's time for my September to be read list. I'm really not fond of planning ahead when it comes to reading books. I like to just grab a book I feel like reading whenever I have the time to read a new book. I'm going to make a little plan for September. Obviously, I would love to finish these 2 books in September. They're both great books and I really want to finish them, so I will be reading these in September. And then if I had the time for it, I would also love to finish the Mortal Instruments series by Cassandra Clare, and that means reading these 3 books. I'm not sure if I'm going to go through with that goal. I will definitely give it a try, but I'm not promising anything. Now it's on video, I'm not promising anything, so you cannot go after me in the end of September and say, you said, because I didn't say anything. I didn't promise anything, I only told you that I would try. So yes, the very last thing that I want to do now is that I'm going to introduce you to my book jar. This is a jar in which I have all the titles of the books that I haven't read yet, but books that are behind me on my shelf. And as you can see, there are quite a lot of titles in it, so I thought that I would pick one now, and that book I will read in September. So this will be my very first picking of a book. Let me see. I'm wondering, what if I pick a book that I really don't want to read? Then am I obliged to read it, or I could just edit it out of the video and you would never know? Well, let's see what I'm picking. I'm digging deep. This one. The Host by Stephenie Meyer. That means that in September I'm also going to be reading The Host by Stephenie Meyer. I really hope the book is better than the movie. I watched the movie recently and I really didn't like it, so I really hope that the book will be better. That's it for today. I'm going to wrap up now and I will be back soon with another video. Please leave me a comment if you want to share with me what you're going to read in September or what you read in August. Bye!